It's nice to see all of you on a Wednesday afternoon in middle of July. So I guess this fabulous turnout. So thank you so much for joining us here tonight to talk about our budget. Budget 101. I asked Monty if he wanted a drink before the presentation. He said, "I'll wait."
I said yes, but I'll wait till we're done.
So on behalf of Irina Wolfley and her son Jonathan Buckley, who is Let's Talk Vero, I appreciate you once again curating a terrific menu for us, or I should say presentation for us. So thank you so much. And I'd also would like to give a quick shout out to Let's Talk Vero partners, two of which are here tonight. One is the gentleman in the back. That's Chris with Chris Cronin Media. And he is the one that miraculously pulls us together and makes it look really good in the emails. He does a terrific job putting the videos together. So that's Chris. And then Christine Hughes is here tonight, and she is with Dale Sorensen Real Estate, and she is one of the top realtors here in Indian River County. So thank you as well. And the other folks that could not join us tonight, but nevertheless are partners, are Joey and Kimmy Seafood. That's Kimmy Conveni. I'm sorry. Good thing she's not here. And Joey. And Austin Dingwall with Dingwall Architecture, Morgan Reynolds with Beyond the Trend Marketing, and Ed Champy, Boulevard Tennis and Padel Club. So, and thank you, obviously, Irina, for coordinating everybody. So this afternoon, we thought we'd try to figure out kind of the ABCs of how the budget works, and obviously hope you'll have some good questions for these gentlemen later on today. And I know you know who these nice men are. So John Catulio, he's the city mayor. Joseph Buckley, and Monty Falls, who is the city manager. So Monty told me this is his 35th year working for the city. And he has there's still three big goals on his plate. And that is three corners to remediate or take down the water and sewer plant. And remediate is the wrong word, to remove.
And build the new plant, yeah.
And build a new plant. And the third was, help me out,
Get the marina.
get the marina. So that's still on his plate. And he thinks he can do this by April of 2028. Because that's when he mentally would like to retire. I heard John laugh too. All right. But you know, I think those are three terrific, that would be milestones. So we're going to root for you because it'll be good for all of us if you can pull that off.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So let's see, I lost my train of thought because I started to chat with you. So when Irina started Let's Talk Vero, hi Charlotte. When Irina started Let's Talk Vero, basically her concept was, wouldn't it be nice if we could figure out how to have a community conversation and figure out topics that would be of interest to everyone. And then hopefully the end goal would be to engage, enlighten, and educate all of us. And so I know when it comes to budgets, it's a lot of numbers and jargon. So when I go to presentations like that, I always think it's like drinking out of a fire hose. But I'm hoping that we'll pick up like 2 or 3 really good things that we can remember tonight that will resonate. And I know Irina is passionate about trying to do this for us and to provide these community engagements. So speaking of community and community engagement, so obviously you're in Riverside Theater, and but if you haven't joined us before, because I always do introduce the theater, basically the theater and John Moses, who's the CEO, he likes to think of the theater as the living room of our community. And so the theater and Danielle, his executive assistant, are always very generous with their time and staff to basically do this for us. and most of it do it on a volunteer basis, which is really terrific. So, in case you didn't know it, you are sitting in the largest small town nonprofit professional theater in the state of Florida, and and so the theater employs about 100 people. Most of them, unlike many organizations here in town, actually, most of them do live here in the county. So that means their incomes stay here in the county. And the income total is roughly 2.5 million in terms of wages and salaries. And the theater generates roughly $12 million in annual revenues. And so we are most appreciative, obviously, of all their time here. And most common question people ask us about the theater is, so are these shows that are simply traveling shows? And so the other fun fact is that no, everything is made here, in which most people don't realize. They make their own sets, they make their own costumes, everything is done here locally, and it does move on. So this organization actually goes to New York City every fall and auditions these talented young people that love to come to Vero Beach. Shocking news, in January, February, and March, when it's really cold in New York City. And they think this is kind of like the cat's meow. But real quick, we're curious. We were just chatting earlier before this started. How many of you here tonight live in the Vero Beach city limits? All right, that's a wave. I can deduct who, if you didn't raise your hand, you live in the county. And so how many of you here have lived in the city more than 10 years? Okay, lots of you. And any newbies, anybody here to Vero that's only been here a year or less? Okay, and anybody, I know one person that's here tonight that was born in Vero Beach. Anybody born in Vero Beach? That's really great. 1, 2. Okay, last time there were 7. Okay, including a couple of our kids, so we kind of cheated. So anyway, I think that's terrific. Also, a little before we get going, another little fun fact about Vero Beach, in case you didn't join us last time. So last time around, it was just about the 100-year anniversary of Vero Beach. But the city used to be called Vero. And in September of 1925, they decided to add the word beach. And it became Vero Beach because this entrepreneurial guy called Waldo Sexton decided to make a pitch to whoever the power brokers were at the time. Okay. And he said, couldn't you consider adding the word beach? We're right by the ocean. This is a really nice place. And they said, well, why do you think that would be good? And Waldo Sexton said, it would make my life a lot easier if you could add the word beach, because then I could get the Northerners to come down here to play golf. So marketing of Vero Beach already started 100 years ago with Waldo Sexton. So without any hence further ado, as they say, and Monty put together a great little summary for us, aptly named Budget 101. For 201, I don't know what we'll have to do.
We had to get somebody else to present that.
I like that. After April of 28, we'll do Budget 202. Okay, sounds great. So I will hand it over to you. And again, we appreciate you coming. And when Monty concludes, I've got some questions that we'll ask these gentlemen, and then hopefully around 6:30, we'll have enough time for you to ask them some questions as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maribel. And before I get started, I won't miss anybody, but I see some of my council members, Councilmember John Carroll and Aaron Voss, and County Commissioner Laura Moss. Did I miss any commissioner or council member? Okay, so I moved to Vero Beach 1981 from North Carolina, and I left a beautiful state that had 4 seasons. But I didn't realize I moved to a place that had 5 seasons. We have summer, winter, tourist season, hurricane season, and in the city we have budget season.
And we're non-budget season.
So we'll get started here. Maribel asked this question, so we already know there's 17,000 people in the city of Vero Beach. But there's 100,000 people with the Vero Beach mailing address, and that creates some issues because we get a lot of people that call us because of that. And you can see on the map, all the areas in yellow are Vero Beach mailing address. And then Sebastian in the pink, Fellsville in the light green, and Town of Morton up there, Inner Shores in the light blue. So our county's growing, city of Vero Beach is not. These are some census numbers from 1980, 2025, and projected 2050.
Mike, can you hold that closer to her?
Something of. And 2050.
You're gonna hold it really like.
2050, okay, will be 210. I felt I had to include this graphic from Councilmember Voss, which shows the percentage of the city population, the county population over time. So back in the early 40s, we were 50% of the population. And in 2050, we'll be 10%, which is 9%, which is about what we are today. So the growth in the county puts a lot of pressure on the city, especially on the island, in terms of the use of our beaches, our lifeguards, boat ramps, parks and playgrounds, and last but not least, parking. And this is pretty evident when you look at the map of the county. The green stars are the bridges from the mainland to the island, and the two in South County are in the city limits, which directs that traffic directly into the city of Vero Beach. Which brings us to tonight's topic, the budget. The 17,000 city residents are on the hook or put the bill for the city's budget. So one of the things we want to talk about is your current tax bill. And these 24, 25, none of us have adopted the 25, 26 millage rates yet. But you can see for a city resident, the total millage 15.6986. The largest portion of that is the school board, 7.75 county, 3.55 the city, 277. Emergency services, 235, and the others, which is St. John's Water Management District, mosquito control, and the smaller taxing districts, 1.28. So a graphic representation of that shows you what those percentages look like. And what does that do on a piece of property that has a taxable value of $500,000? And the taxable value is determined by the assessed value that Wes Davis's office comes up with, less any exemptions that you would have. So we're looking at this one as a $500,000 taxable value, which would equate to the actual property taxes calculated here. So for that, the property tax bill totally would be $7,849. Of that, the cities would be $1,384 or 17.63%. The city of Vero Beach budget, it totals about $71 million. The general fund represents about half of that at 34.6, and the others are the enterprise funds, the cemetery, water, sewer, marina, solid waste, and airport. The enterprise funds, or three of them, the water, sewer, marine, and solid waste, transfer 6% of their revenues to the general fund as one of the revenue sources for the general fund. The airport, because of federal aviation grant assurances, all the revenue that's produced in the airport has to stay in the airport. So if anybody wants an airport, we'll be glad to give it to you. It's a great business if you want to not make a profit and be on the hook for something if you have a loss. The cemetery is another one of our enterprise funds. The revenue it generates is from sale of grave spaces, does not cover the cost of operations, and we subsidize that to the tune of about $50,000 a year. So our general fund budget composed of these items: the police department, which is the lion's share, 33%, $11.5 million. Public Works, 7.3, recreation, 2.8, and then finance, 3.1, planning, 800,000, and all the others about 9 million. So that's another graphic representation of the budget and the pieces of the pie, just to show you that the police department and public works are the lion's shares, and that's where the bulk of the employees reside. revenues for the general fund operations come from various sources. I've listed the main ones, with the ad valorem property tax being number one at about $12 million, which is about 35% of the budget. Utility taxes, admin charges, electric utility franchise fees, interest on investments, and down the line. So as you can see, the general fund budget that comes from property taxes is about $12 million and the police department budget of 11.5. So if you think of it, that the property taxes essentially pay for the police department. And again, a graphical representation of. So is that a little better? Just a graphical representation shows how those percentages work out across the board. So, any questions that you all have? And Maribel, you want to do your other ones first? We'll do that and go from there.
Sure. Why don't we try to do some questions as we had discussed, and then yes, obviously open it up to the floor. But you know, it's a community meeting, so if you have any questions in between, by all means, raise your hand, like this young lady just did.
So this has been great to hear the detail. I wonder if you could put it in context and let us know if there are shortfalls, if there are areas that you're struggling, just to put it in perspective for us from a budget perspective. Or how are we doing financially as a community?
And you know what? I think you actually teed it up very nicely for us. Thank you. And we didn't rehearse this. I think we're going to get to all that.
Perfect.
And I've kind of got 12, 13 questions kind of penciled out here for these gentlemen. And so I think we'll hit maybe, but I think we will land on that as we start our conversation. Okay, great. So our first question is, could you explain the purpose and the management of the city's reserve funds? So I understand you hold roughly 62.5 million in reserves. And I saw a line item that there's investment income. I assume that's from that reserve. And so we were wondering, how are those funds allocated? Or I suspect probably some of it is restricted. But that's a lot of money in reserve. So I was wondering how you look at that and how you allocate it.
Yes, after the sale of the electric utility in 2018, the city council worked with the city staff to come up with a reserve policy adopted as a resolution, which sets out what we do with those. And let me get back here and put my glasses on so I can see everything. So we had several different categories. Emergency disaster reserve fund we established at $5 million. So we have that in a recurring fund for disaster capability to be able to get us kicked off before we might get any reimbursements from state or federal sources. Then we set up an unfunded pension liability to cover the pensions of the city employees because prior to that time, we froze the defined benefit pension plan and established a new 401k type plan. So we took $14.4 million of this and put in a reserve to make that defined benefit portion of the pension fund until it is fully funded. And we're getting really close to that. We did do some interesting things. Instead of having a final year would be funded, we did a 5-year rolling average, so we didn't have a big payment due in any one year. And over a 20-year period, it was only a couple $100,000 difference in total payments into that fund. So that was one of the big things. And then other post-employment benefits, the city does do a subsidy for health care for retirees based on the number of years of service. So we set $9.5 million aside for that to fund that. We had a capital and infrastructure reserve account. We established at $21 million, and the bulk of that is still intact. We used $1 million of that for the Jimmy Graves Sports Complex, and the council gave $2 million of that as a gift to the marina for the phase one, which is the dry storage building that's under construction right now. So there's still about $19 million in that fund. And then we set a budget stabilization amount at 10% of our budget for a buffer for things that might happen. And then a working capital account of 25% of our annual budget. Just as the ebb and flow of things go, we'll have plenty of money to operate. So when you hear the mayor say we have plenty of reserves to cover that, it was because of the forethought from these things that were set aside. So this money, along with other unallocated reserves or what is in our investment account, and we do have one of the revenue line items from that.
Okay, thank you very much. But quick question, the 19 million that is now, quote unquote, it sounds like it's somewhat discretionary in terms of how you wish to allocate it as the needs arise?
For capital construction, that's correct.
Capital project.
Capital projects, and city council is the entity that can make that decision to allocate it?
Can allocate.
Okay. Do you have any plans to allocate any of it in 26?
We'll tell you after tomorrow.
Oh, okay. We're a date.
Actually, after our meeting in August.
Okay.
There are some, can you hear me? Okay,
Mhm.
there are some projects that, may necessitate us to dip into that account. And to be quite frank, one of them is gonna be the installation of an ERP system, which is long overdue in this city. And if anybody's been involved with installing an ERP system across an organization, even the size of our organization, it's it's multi-millions of dollars over a multiple period of time. All of it, most of it can be allocated to capital because of the fact you can distribute it not only your general fund accounts, because it's going to be distributed entirely on your enterprise. So it's going to be a major undertaking for the city, but based on what happened to us in the recent past regarding an audit, we found out when we brought in a fresh pair of eyes with our new finance director, along with conversations with our current auditor, Terry Burkett of the Parkland, that it's long overdue.
Okay. We're gonna switch out microphones again, or are you just gonna
Yeah, we'll
use your lungs?
take turns.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you could scoot your chairs closer together, and then you can just hand it to each other. Just another suggestion. Right. The microphones are thinking. There's people. Thank you. Did you hear that? To hold the base of it, yeah.
Don't hold the base.
To hold the base.
Hold the base.
Oh, I'm sorry, don't hold the base. It's been a long day. Do not hold the base. Thank you. Thanks to this really smart young lady up here, this is working, so, which is good news. So again, for either one of you, how you wish to answer, how does the city of Vero Beach determine which projects and services receive funding each year? And what is the process for balancing competing priorities?
Well, it's a wants and needs, and that's what we'll do when we have our capital project budget, and that's what everybody's concerned about is what do we do with this $19 million? And each year we have capital project needs, and I would say from a public works standpoint, road paving is always one of the big ones. We have done the best we can to keep that funding where it needs to be. It needs to be at least $1 million a year. So that's always a top priority, but it's always the easiest one to back off of because you can always wait one more year. So, but it's community needs, what projects that they want and what is actually required for infrastructure.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you say it's community need, is that answering the squeaky wheel, or is that the councilor pointing up what they think is most important to be taken care of with $19 million?
Well,
you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, is it the squeaky wheel or is it somebody's, for better word, pork project that they bring in? But we have a 5-year capital program that the projects usually are conceived and put into that plan and they progress through to the construction year or the funding year. So very rarely do we get a project that just gets put in and gets funded that one year. It's a process that goes through and we debate those projects.
Who manages the 19 million, the investment?
It's in our, we have an investment account that is managed by an investment firm.
What firm is it?
I don't have that with me here tonight.
We're restricted by this.
Restricted by the state of what it can be invested
By the
into.
state of Florida, how and where we can.
Okay, that was my follow-up, is whether there are guidelines set by the state. as to-
Yes, there are. Yes,
Yeah.
Extremely
conservative.
Right.
conservative.
Extremely conservative. I happen to know the theater also gets a little bit of money, cultural funds from the state. And it's very restrictive in terms of how the assets can be invested. So that usually means when they hear conservative, it's in a money market, a treasury bill, something safe backed by the US government.
Usually short term.
Our
Short term.
Usually short.
Yeah, and then usually the mandate is it has to be short term, 6 months or less. So ballpark, you can assume in today's world, you're earning roughly 4% on your money.
3.6 is what they told us for this year.
Okay, so
There are also two sources of what you call capital. And the fund that we have left over from the power plant sale, that's, why don't we just call it a discretionary pot? It sits there and in some years has never been used. And in some years, it can't get used. It got used for the Jimmy Gray's field, and we gave $1 million to that, which if looked at TC Pond last week, they're making some great progress on that. The inclusion playground, which is the reason why we donated the money, it looks like the parts of the playground are there. It looks like it's being installed anytime now. And the Marina Fund. The Marina Fund, we came from that fund, that capital project, that capital location of the funds came into the Marina for $2 million because the Marina was in such a state of disrepair over a period of years. And you can go long stories of why that happened, but it happened. And it needed a jump start to make the numbers work for the enterprise fund. So the previous city council decided that to help that move along, they would take $2 million from that capital fund. So
Is this another chunk besides the 19 million?
no, this is the 19 million.
This is the 19.
This is the 19 million. But do we get other sources of funding on a yearly basis through some of the sources of revenue you saw when Monty made the presentation that are only can be used for capital? That's the capital that you're gonna buy in, vehicles with, or the paving, or other capital, improving the pavilions at the parks. That's a different capital fund. That's not that money. This is one that comes out on a yearly basis, that comes through different sources of revenue. That in Florida, it flows up to Tallahassee, flows down through the county. County then distributes it on a formula. Most formulas are population based. One formula that have to do with roads is a combination of population and road miles that you have, which we don't. So as you can then see, when we were discussing this, as the county grows and we don't, these sources of revenue get smaller for us over a period of time. So that's our, that's quote unquote our problem to work with as we look at this capital. So next year, we're going to be, I think tomorrow, next day into August, we'll be discussing the fact we're going to do a revitalization of Pocahontas Park. It's long overdue. That's where that money will not necessarily come from that 19 million. It's money that we've already got in the long-term capital budget forecast that we're going to get in from these other sources I mentioned. And we're going to upgrade the traffic signals at the corner of 21st and 14th. That's It's hard to believe this, but those traffic signals will cost in excess of $1 million. And that comes from that cap, not the 819, but this other capital source. Excuse me. So hopefully I muddy the waters even more.
For clarification, after 7, you can snack John. I'm gonna take care of it. So when you, on your slide, I think you show $12.5 million were collected from property taxes. Was that right?
Yes,
Ballpark? Okay.
that's correct.
So you said 12.5 million collected property taxes, and that's basically what you need to cover the police.
That's correct.
And I read that the police really hasn't had a significant change in their workforce since '08, and they're even less than today than they were going back to when we had the credit collapse.
0809, we
Oh,
cut the city workforce by about 33%.
That's it, yeah. So just big picture, I'm wondering if you think, is this really sustainable for a city when the property taxes collected literally cover one line item? And how long is that sustainable, i.e. the rate that's charged?
Well, each year we're faced with balancing a budget. We don't do like the federal government. We don't do deficit spending. So
Oh, you
each
don't
year
print money?
we do not. We do not contribute to those inflationary pressures.
Right. Next time, bring green paint. No, I'm just kidding.
So each year we have to look at our revenue sources and see what we do, and we have to balance that against what our needs are. But I will, I'll point out that how many of you were around when we had the sale of the electric utility? Okay, so 2018, we sold the Vero Beach Electric Utility to Florida Power Light because of the rate disparity. And when we did that, the net difference in revenue that came into the general fund from the electric utility operation was $2.5 million a year. So when we used to transfer 6% from the electric utility to the general fund, we stopped that, but then we got franchise fees and utility taxes from Florida Power and Light. So the net difference was $2.5 million. So the city devised a plan to take $7.5 million of those sale proceeds and set them aside in a fund and put into place what they call the glide path. And what that was to take that $7.5 million and over 5 years, inject it into the general fund to ameliorate the loss of that revenue. So the first year they put in $2.5 million, the second year $2 million, the third year $1.5 million, $1 million, and then $500,000. So what that meant was for 5 years, we started out the budget each year $500,000 in the hole. And I remember sitting in the council chambers, I wasn't city manager at the time, but people coming up to the podium and said, I don't care what you do, if you have to raise my taxes, sell that electric utility. But not only did we not raise the taxes, we lowered the millage. The very next year, we went from 2.5196 to 2.500, and we left it at 2.500 for 3 years. And then only 2 years ago did we raise it to 2.68, and last year 2.76-ish. So we've started in the hole, and we haven't recovered from that. If the taxes had been raised each year, that incremental amount to replace the $500,000 that was lost each year, we wouldn't be in quite the situation we're in today.
So it's easy for me to say this because I'm not in public office. And so I'm gonna ask you, do you think this millage rate of 2.76 really is sustainable? Or do you feel compelled to maybe talk to the community about maybe getting it more on par with either a Stewart or a Fort Pierce? You know, Stewart's millage rate is almost twice of ours. It's at 5.
Stewart's at 5.
And Fort Pierce is at 6.9, 2.5 times ours. So I'm just wondering, when you look at us and then, how do you how do you think that, flies?
Well, it's, the community wants a lot of things and those things cost money.
Right,
And our budget, if you look at our general fund budget, the bulk of the costs are personnel costs. We're in the service industry.
right.
We provide a service, we provide people to provide services to the community. So we look at our budget, above the line personnel costs, below the line operating costs, and almost 80% of the costs are, are above the line in personnel costs.
So John, hello.
Yes.
You made you were quoted in an article, and I thought it was a good line.
Really?
Yes, it was a good line. It was something akin to, well, if you can't drive a Mercedes on Chevy payments, something along those lines. Does that ring a bell? Because I think you were asked how we're going to kind of pay for all the things that we would like to see addressed here as a community. And I think the boardwalk was one of those items that was discussed in the article. And, the article kind of asked us as a community, is it appropriate for us to reach out to the members of the community to help subsidize the repair of a public structure, a boardwalk? And it was kind of I think whoever interviewed you was trying to ask, are you kind of okay with that? Or should we now talk about it and hence back to, should we now come closer to a Stewart or a Fort Pierce in millage rate? And I know you're running for reelection.
No, exactly. It's a difficult question, but it's actually, from my standpoint,
Yeah.
I'm going to speak for myself, it's not, for me, not difficult to answer. We're not, from my standpoint, we're not gonna leap from where we are now to Stewart or Fort Pierce, or even Port St. Lucie. Okay, all those millage rates are at least 2x, almost 2x higher in one instance, and somewhere even higher than that. It's not the nature of our community to do that. But some of this, and we've got a former tax collector sitting in the audience here who will attest to this. Some of this is restricted by what is known as the rollback rate. When Monty described what happened with the glide path, what it exacerbates the problem as you keep rolling this forward is what is known as the state's rollback rate. What the state will do on a yearly basis was based on your new assessments that we get from West Davis. They calculate, they got some logarithm, they calculate this logarithm, how much money you can raise, the same amount of money, what would your rollback rate be? And it's always lower. It's never higher. It's always lower. So what happens is, as we kept rolling this forward, we kept rolling everything lower, and we would have demand for our resources, which are our revenue, our dollars, and we only could raise a certain amount every year. Above 7%. I think it's above I think it's around above 7, you need a unanimous vote for the city council. Up to 5, above 3 to 5, it's around, you need supermajority. You need a supermajority. And let's just say that didn't happen. You couldn't do that. So we are where we are. So this is what we're living with. What we need to do is, and what I look at is you balance the needs of what the city is. City, it's public safety and quality of life. We have hard decisions to make because of what Monty presented and what we believe is an unfair burden placed on the city. No offense to any county residents or non-city residents. And I know we've got a county commissioner sitting in the audience, and I'll apologize in advance. So here we go. The county has made strategic decisions not to invest in certain quality of life
installations, for lack of a better word, or services, because we supply them. We have the best boat ramps, okay, in the whole county. They're located on the island, and if you don't believe that they're best, most popular, come here on a weekend. Okay, and it's gonna literally, it's mayhem sometimes. Yeah, people wanting to use up boat ramps. Again, no offense to anybody in the county, we have the best beaches. We have the two bridges come to our side of the mainland, from mainland to our beaches. We have the best beaches. We have, and that's the traffic. We have the places people want to be, like here, like the museums, like the restaurants. People come here. We're the county seat, the county courthouse. We have our police department has a high head count because of that, because of the traffic that flows in and out of our city. We have a larger police department than historical ratios. So all these things are coming together now finally, and the city is at a point right now where we're trying to figure out how the county can pay a fair share of what they're using in the city. Okay. Many years ago, they did help subsidize the recreation. But that stopped a decade or so, maybe longer, 20 years ago. They don't participate in that. They've made strategic decisions. I think, based on the fact we're supplying the services, why should we do them? Okay. We approached them recently about combining our lifeguards and having one lifeguard force for the whole county administered. We asked it be administered to EMS services. I guess that was then presented to the county commissioner as they took a different tack. They wanted to combine it into county services. And that was voted down. So now, to exacerbate that problem, recently under Tallahassee rule, the lifeguards now, they've expanded the tourist development tax where you can now pay lifeguards out of your tourist development tax. It used to be you had to be a certain size county. Now they lowered that. And if you're a county that borders an ocean or a gulf, and you can use your tourist development tax money. We don't get any tourist development tax money. We're precluded even to apply for it. We're one of only 3 counties, the 67, in the whole state that don't allow us to even apply for it.
Why is that?
Why? Don't ask me. It's not my rule. Okay, so that's how we've appealed to the county commissioners. So far, they haven't responded in a positive way. And now we have to go ahead and we will have difficult decisions from this city council on, I think. Again, I'm not speaking for anybody other than city council members that are here. I'm speaking from my standpoint. And we had a very interesting discussion, and it is public because we had it today at our budget meetings, about what to do with lifeguards. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Because I read some of this in the paper where there's negotiations between the city and the county as to who shares maybe in certain expenses. So when you say the tourist development tax, is that the same as the bed tax?
Yeah, the bed tax.
It is, okay. And so maybe you could explain that a little further in the sense that, so we don't share in any of the bed tax and we're one of the very few counties that doesn't?
And to exacerbate the problem, most of the bed tax is collected in our city
Okay, so, and why is it not shared?
by county commission ordinance, I guess.
So it's an ordinance or it's a vote by the county commission?
It's an
It's an ordinance or?
My point being, is it negotiable? Is it not negotiable?
They make it.
we would have to get them to change their operating procedure, their ordinance, their resolution that would allow that. As the mayor said, there's only 3 counties in Florida that don't allow the municipalities to even apply for that money.
Okay, so if I understand clearly, City of Vero Beach owns the beaches.
Not all.
Well, no, owns in the city proper, we own access to the beaches,
The public beaches.
to the public beaches, which is, okay. And then the boat ramp right here, we own that. So,
There's 2 programs.
okay.
Williams, one at Riverside.
Okay. So have you considered a usage tax?
Yes, we have. And we've talked about, do we charge city residents one rate, county residents another rate? If you accept grant funding for those, you have to charge this. If you charge, you have to charge the same rate.
That's under.
So just for information, lifeguards in the city are about $1 million a year. Lifeguards in the county are about $1 million a year. There's about $5 million in bed tax, tourist tax revenue collected annually in the county, with the lion's share of that, about half of it being collected in the city of Vero Beach. So we're working with some of our state legislators, trying to make some modifications to the state law that will allow the cities to be able to do that. So things to come.
But so what will be a workaround to try to participate in this bed tax, or there is at this point no workaround?
At this point, there is no workaround. And you brought up something before I lose the train of thought.
Please.
Sebastian Felsmere, you've seen in the news, have annexed or are in the process of annexing large tracts of land. When you're a confined entity like the city of Vero Beach is, with no undeveloped land around you, we can't grow. And if you can't grow, as the costs increase, they are still borne by the same number of people you have. If we had vacant land around us, annexation would be easy.
Right.
But we don't. Those were decisions that were made years ago. South Beach, we could have cut a deal before we provided the utilities. We could have had all that come into the city, but we didn't.
Right.
And we're kind of struggling from that right now. But if South Beach wanted to come into the city, all of them have city addresses. They all call and are shocked to find out when they're not in the city. But if they wanted to come into the city, we'd be happy to talk to them.
Yeah, I had asked Monty earlier while you were all coming in, so how does one go about to annex a portion of the city? In this case, what's been discussed in public articles, quote unquote, South Beach, which I assume is from the 7-Eleven on down to the county line. Is that South
Actually,
Beach?
it's about midway from Castaway.
Okay,
So half of Castaway's in the city and the other half's in the county,
all right. And so from Castaway then all the way down to the county
all
line?
the way to county line.
Okay, so we asked Perplexity.ai, we asked the chatbot to calculate if the South Beach was annexed, how much extra revenue that would generate, and it estimated between $8 to $10 million because the property values on the island
That's-
are slightly higher than in the city. And so I had asked Monty earlier, what is the probability of that happening? And your answer surprised me, but it makes sense. You said it needs to be organic. It needs to be if the community wants to start the conversation or thinks there'd be some value added.
I told Maryville, we can't do like at Florida State. The comes out and sticks the spear in the ground and claims the ground. We can't do that. It has to be organic from the community. They would have to ask, there has to be a referendum, and the majority of the people requesting the annexation would have to vote.
Might announce that the number of people in our city is how can that happen? So maybe we should survey.
Okay. Did you hear what Irina said? She said she could do a survey as part of Let's Talk Vero because apparently she's gotten several times that question of
Nobody go to city council.
right. Yeah. And I didn't know it had to be quote unquote, it's on us. It's right. It's quote unquote organic. So that'd be great survey question. Yes.
Have there been some conversations, like mass conversations that have allowed that feedback from the South Beach community or even passed away folks, what might be holding back from the
We've been contacted sporadically by some individuals, but there's no organized group. You know, it's a bunch of different subdivisions. There's no one South Beach organization. So
I'm just curious what some of the either excitement or drawbacks would be from some of those folks.
well, there's always pros and cons. We feel like we could offer better police protection. We already have officers on the island. The sheriff's department does a great job, but they have some zones that are more spread out than we are. So we feel like we could do better police protection. We have better short-term rental protection. We have a lot of people that have called, not a lot of people, we have some people from South Beach who called and said, would your short-term rentals apply to us if we annexed? And the answer is yes, maybe. You'd have to be in time, you'd have to notify people and let it go. You have to let people recoup the investments they've made, but yes, there's a possibility of that. There'll be a little increase in cost, but we think that for the additional service you get, that cost would be justified. Plus, those folks that live in South Beach would have a say in local elections. We've had comments that we have your water and sewer service, but we can't help decide. We'd love for you to. So
That's right. You can become a part of the city anytime you like. Laura Moss, County Commission. More importantly for tonight, former mayor, City of Vero Beach. Been fighting the tourist tax thing since I was the mayor, and there's documentation to that effect when I went with the city manager to meet with the county administrator, and also the chairman at that time. But we need to take a step back. All right, it's not city or county. Everyone lives in the county, okay? Every single person here lives in the county. And within the county, there are 3 cities, Vero Beach, Sebastian, and Fellsmere, and 2 towns. And that's Orchid and Indian River Shores. And those are legal entities. So everyone lives in the city, lives in the county, and some people also live within a city or a town. That being said, with the tourist tax, it's not, yes, I'm in favor, and I can speak only for myself. As the mayor said, he can't speak for his colleagues. I can't speak for mine. But I would certainly be in favor of spending some of the money on lifeguards. And it's costly, that's $1 million. And spending, now that we can, some of the tourist tax money on that. But the tourist tax money isn't going to fix everything because half the tourist tax money is spent on beach renourishment, which, you're not going to want to change. You want to keep the beaches in good shape, good condition. So that's half of it. Beach renourishment is very costly. The city or even the county alone could not pay for it. We could not afford it. We also usually get either state and or federal money to help us out with that. It's very, very expensive to maintain the beaches. And a large portion of tourist tax goes toward the beaches. The portion I think that's being referred to here is a tourist development tax, okay? And the argument has always been, and I think it's changed now, that it should go through a Chamber of Commerce. And if you've ever looked at the report for where the tourist tax dollars go, a large portion of it goes to the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce, and the Sebastian Chamber of Commerce also gets some. So now we have a Vero Beach Chamber of Commerce, and I don't know if it's gone through, but they told me, and I've been suggesting it for years, they have to become nationally accredited. So I believe that they have. They were short on cash, and they weren't able to afford an audit, because you have to have an audit in order to become accredited nationally. But if they are now at that point, then they can apply for tourist tax dollars.
They are accredited.
They are accredited,
It's on their
okay.
website.
Okay, excellent. So they can apply for tourist tax dollars. So it's not a question of, well, can the city apply or not apply? It's a question of having the Chamber of Commerce. You might as well, instead of bucking the trend, you might as well go with it. So if they're accredited, have them apply. And then, use that money, some of the tourist development funds for Vero Beach, through them just the way Sebastian does it through their Chamber of Commerce and Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. But, you know, the county growing is not an anomaly. I mean, we know that as a state, we're growing. You know, the anomaly is the city of Vero Beach, which I love dearly. I'm only the sixth woman to serve as mayor of Vero Beach in 100-something years. And I love the city dearly. But the city's an anomaly because, as the city manager was pointing out, and I still have not heard why, usually when a city provides services like electric, water, and sewer, it annexes. You know, cities grow by annexation. And for whatever reason, if anybody knows that should be the next person to speak, for whatever reason, the city of Vero Beach decades ago chose not to take that path. I mean, if you think about it, Indian River Shores, and we have town councilman Bob Allwater here, they incorporated in the 1980s. So that's a relatively, I'm sorry, what?
1953.
Oh, 53, okay. Well, you know, it could have been annexed before that, but imagine if the city of Vero Beach included Indian River Shores and South Beach. I mean, that's.
Can I interject here?
If the city, you know, if the city
Can I
included that.
interrupt?
So that's a
please?
way to grow. Anyway,
Okay.
thank you.
I love this argument, but it's like a red herring argument. Okay. You can live in the past. I mean, you can learn from the past, but you can't live in it. We're here now. You know, whatever happened back when the shores was discovered. Jay, you know, it happened. That's not going to help me today. Okay. As a city. And it's a nice story, but it is what it is. So here we are now. And right now is what we have. We have the situation where our city is not growing. Fine. The tourist development tax is not distributed, and I'll say this, fairly. It's collected. Most of the tax comes from this city and it'll be exacerbated in 6 years when Three Corners opens and an additional 250 beds become available to be taxed. So we get none of that revenue. I know it just happened with the lifeguards being added to the fact you can use your tourist development tax money. We have tried to have a discourse with the county on these issues, but there's been no movement. It's my fourth year on the city council. It's my third year as the mayor, and we have had it's been very little movement. I mean, actually the movement was they got to consider it and vote it down a couple of months ago. So unless there's a philosophical change at the county level, you know, we're going to have to pursue another avenue from our standpoint. One of those is at Tallahassee, which is an arduous process, a costly process, and it's not going to happen overnight. And another one is to address the services that we provide. And can we charge for them? Can we not charge for them? You know, how do you address the lifeguard situation, which is the cost that jumps up the most. We charge county residents to use our facilities if they get, you know, passes or memberships. Do we have to exponentially increase those? So I guess we're trying to be kind of like open book here in our discussions, because this is the kind of forum it's good to project it to, because very few people come to city council meetings to listen to this. Very few people listen to a budget discussion. They'll read it in the newspaper and react to when the millage rate goes up. But they never see how the sausage gets made. And in many instances right now, you're getting to see how the sausage gets made. And,
And it's not pretty.
and it's, well, usually making the sausage is not pretty anyhow.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So Monty, as after listening to you now, I'm not sure if this question is even fits anymore, but let me ask it. How does the city's budget interact with the Indian River County budget? And how do city and county leaders coordinate to ensure efficient use of tax dollars and avoid duplication of services? I'm getting the vibe you guys aren't getting along.
Well, I think we get along. There's different silos.
Right, silos.
And we'll
that's a
talk
great word.
about the lifeguards, the $1 million for the city is about 1/35 of our budget.
Right,
For the county, it's about 1/500 of the budget.
say that again, it was,
About 1/500 of the budget. So it's a lot more important to us than it is to them
right,
to offset that $1 million. It
Right.
means a lot more to the city residents than it does to a county resident because of the scale of the number. We don't duplicate a lot of services. I think the reason you have cities is because people want a little different level of service.
Mhm.
And I think we provide it. If you drive around, one that's easy for me, you drive through the city, there's streetlights. You drive through the county outside the city limits, and there's streetlights where the intersections are.
right.
So that's just one of the differences. It's municipal services versus rural services.
Right. So kind of back to collectively, what kind of city do we wish to have moving forward, right? And I think we're all smart enough to understand that costs keep rising. I don't think we're collecting enough revenues. That's a nice way of saying I don't think we collect enough taxes. No, because it's so easy to say as if you are on a public side like you are, or be inclined to say, well, we can lower taxes, or then now the state is looking at eliminating property taxes, which I don't see mathematically how that works. But that's just my opinion. But I feel like just reading all the comments and people, just general conversation is that I think we all really enjoy living here. I think we all know we have a good thing here. And but there is this thing that is now, I think, more prevalent, and that's the need to seriously discuss further sources of revenues.
Yeah. And if you remember one of the slides, we showed how the county was growing and we weren't. And we've talked about how many of our facilities, especially on the island, get used by non-city residents. I'll call it that way. It's
Right.
county residents, it's
Right.
tourists and what have you. But each new residential unit that comes into the county pays a recreation impact fee. And those recreation impact fees are spent for new recreational facilities in the county. We need to find a way to be able to use those funds to provide for recreational facilities where they're needed. If the people are going to come into the city for recreational needs and we have to provide more capacity, we should find a way to be able to get those.
And do you feel like before April of 2028, you think there is a probability that this can be accomplished with the makeup of the structuring in the county now and the way the county commission looks at revenue streams and the city?
If we could get people talking about it, I think that would be a success.
Okay, Abriana, you started to talk about it. That's, I think, why you decided to call it Let's Talk Vero. Okay. So, well, talk is cheap, as they say. We can talk for a long time. But when do you kind of reach the end of the runway, when you're at the point where you just talk too long and don't have enough money?
It's one of the tough questions we deal with. You know, we have to come, we can't operate at a deficit. We're going to continue to provide these services, and if the costs are spread among 17,000 residents, that cost has to go up.
Right.
For us to continue to do that.
So I also figured out if the millage rate went from 2.77 to 3.00, the average taxpayer would pay an extra $85 a year. So, and I don't know when you are interfacing with the public. And because as soon as I think you hear that you're going to have to raise taxes or you need more money, right? That's taxes. Maybe it would be to kind of position it in just more user-friendly term. And that's why I thought, well, what if we bumped it up to 3? How much would it really cost more? And it was roughly $85 per person that owned a home. That doesn't include all the people that rent here in the city and in the county. And so I thought that's not an onerous number. That's a reasonable number. What do you think? But I'm not quitting my day job. So, yes.
So how much money would that bring in, just out of curiosity, if it were raised for free?
Close to $1 million.
Okay, so that's not very, I mean, that's, $1 million is nice, but that's really not a lot. For me, listening to you, as we all have done for a long time, it's the county that has to become a partner. So I know, we all know how hard you all have worked in your conversations with the county, and they're not on board. Is there something that we can do at the grassroots level here, for example, that you think might help you get this job done?
I think we made the statement that everybody in here is a county resident. Yes. And a county voter. But not everybody is a city resident. So, you know, as Carl said up front, you're a county voter as well. So talk to your commissioners, talk to your elected officials. You know, tell them you want to see more help for all the cities.
Lori, what
Should
do
we
you,
go right into the county commission meetings? Or speak up?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Should we all arrive at the county commission meetings and report?
That's a strategy, you know. Talking to them offline first, I think always helps. So that you give them a little preemption before you show up with your the red t-shirts on.
So when you said, well, can't we get along with the county commission? Out of the periphery of my right eye, I saw people shake their head. So I'm gonna take from that this would be a big hurdle to try to actually have a kumbaya moment and get along.
It's just a paradigm shift.
Okay, paradigms are big.
Sometimes they can.
And they can take a long time. Okay, so if the paradigm shift isn't going to happen, and if people are still going to put their, what did you call it, at FSU, they put the spear in the ground? Okay, at floor, what do we do at UF?
I just remember seeing the horse. What's it called?
That's it. So, that's it, Chief Osceola. So my sense is just what I'm hearing is that the county commission is a good organization, but there's obviously some differences of how money can be allocated, and the differences are entrenched and have been going on for a long time. So now back to the city. So and now maybe the city needs to be more proactive on its own part. Because how long can you wait or ask or try to engage in a conversation and you're not getting anywhere?
So I have a thought on this. Mayor, you mentioned briefly that the next priority project is the emergency response system. Is that an area, is that correct? Did I misunderstand that acronym?
ERP. That's enterprise resource plan, that's his.
Financial.
Good morning.
Oh, it's
Enterprise-wide.
enterprise resource planning. It's a fancy name for putting in a whole series of databases and software. You know,
Gotcha. I apologize. That's my
It's okay.
former military hat. I'm always thinking emergency response.
Sorry.
So what my thought was, I'll just finish that, is that could be an area that the city and the county could work together on, because obviously we're all interested.
Well, we take your point. We actually tried to do that by trying to convince our county brethren to take their lifeguards and our lifeguards and put them into EMS.
Right.
Which is emergency management services, which is on your term notice. And they would gain something and we would gain something. The lifeguards would gain something. They would actually go into, no offense to my city or the county, they'd probably go into a more concentrated organization who was more inclined to be in the same mindset of providing emergency services, some of it being like a paramedic service, and it's a different type of organization. So, and it was rejected.
Yeah. That's
So,
And as.
and I'll, again, this is my opinion only. That to me was the no-brainer of no-brainers.
Agreed. And I just had one more thought. I have a question about arts and what percentage of the budget goes to arts, the museum, the theater, et cetera. So that's my real question here. But I would just hope that the easy area that we could collaborate on would be when it comes to avoiding a tragedy like just what happened in Texas. Making sure that we're all prepared and we're all aware of any emergency and that's coming our way. But I would be curious to hear about what percentage of the budget goes to our theater and our museum or our arts. Thank you.
We actually commit no dollars, but the resource that we do commit is the very, very valuable property that this building is sitting on right here today.
Okay.
Across the street were the museum. That property could not be, you couldn't even get that property today. There's not that tract of land available. So the city had the foresight many years ago with some very philanthropic people in our community that wanted to provide theater, wanted to provide a museum, and gave them this land for $1 a year. And then for many years, actually did the landscape maintenance for them. And we've recently, in the last 20 years, turned that back over. But in their fledgling state, they were struggling to make things happen. And the city was able to do that.
Especially as Tallahassee continues to cut the funding for those things. That's good to know that we have the city support.
So it's the valuable land. If you look at the rowing club, the same thing. If you look at New Salem, the same thing. You know, the city has made a lot of investments in the community based on the land.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
I'm gonna do a good advocate. I'm gonna point with both of y'all. As you know, you've already talked about the annexation that has occurred with Sebastian, but we kind of left ourselves here. What happens when they start building all these new homes and businesses and a lot of folks in Vero Beach decide to move out west of town in Sebastian, or this is all hypothetical now. And suppose you just happen to lose 2,000 people to move out west of town. So what I'm trying to say right now to you is, if I was and I live in the county, but if I was the folks of Vero Beach, I would start investing in my community now before it really gets out of hand, because growth is coming. Growth is going to go out west. I'm hearing all this growth going to occur in Bellsmere, and it's coming. So the logical thing to do right now is to make sure you show up your own area so that when that growth comes, you'll be able to sustain yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's over.
I just wanted to make everybody on the same sheet of music. We are on one of the wealthiest communities in the state of Florida. We are one of the wealthiest communities in the United States. Indian River County is, I believe, 17th in the state of Florida. And I can say that because we all benefit from the quality of life that's here. And if you think about your things that you love, the money that is contributed privately to that makes a lot of that happen incredibly. And if you look at the arts, you look at the lagoon, you look at veterans, you look at the schools, okay? there is a enormous amount of private capital that goes in to make those what they are today. As a way of warning, in not so long past, there were councils that were looking at selling the recreation department. They were looking at selling the marina. They were looking at selling things that we love. And I can share with you as a native, were it not for the council to say, we would feel these are important, they would already be gone. And simple things like asking tourist tax dollars for the lifeguard stands, Laura did that, okay? And it was told no. Okay, so I'm sharing with you simply the lagoon, the Memorial Island over here. Historically, the cost of that was shared with the county. And when the county was approached to pay for the bridge, the answer was, and the bridge cost about $1.3 million, zero. Okay, so I'll share with you, John has gone to the county. Laura had gone to the county when she was on the city council. Robbie Brackett went to the county when he was mayor. I went to the county during the Centennial Parade and asked for assistance in paying for them. And the answer was, no, we have other priorities. So I'll just share with you, if it has to be from the residents here who value what you have, that speaks politically to the county, because this is a county seat. So what do we drive for profit, or what income do we have as a city, county seat? I'm not sure. I can't tell you.
So why don't you take a poll to see what people think about which services should be charged back? Boat ramps, beaches. I think that's an interesting topic of discussion.
Let me ask a quick question. Sure. What other sources of revenue have you considered in the city? Other than raising the millage rate,
Okay.
doubling the millage rate?
Really, the only source of revenue that's under the council's control is the millage rate. We have 3 enterprise funds that give a dividend of 6% to the city.
Yeah.
But in the scale of the numbers, the water and sewer is the largest. It gives about $1.5 million. The solid waste that we run gives about 250,000, and the marina about 150,000. So the only way we can increase those revenues is to increase the overall revenue. Even if the marina doubles in its operations, that 150,000 may go to 300,000, but it's not something that's going to move the needle on our budget.
So is that, so in other words, getting back to the usage tax, I didn't quite understand that. You might have to explain it to me like a 10-year-old. But this is we can't do that because it's governed by the state, by whom?
What usage?
Well, if we had a usage tax for access to the ramps, to the beaches, or to parking.
No, we can do that. We have to charge everyone equally.
We have to charge everyone.
Of course. And who made that rule?
If we take grant funds,
Oh, so that's, so if you're taking state grants, then
you can charge, you have to charge everyone equally.
And what about the parking scenario?
Parking at the beach would be the same thing. If you've taken a grant to build a parking lot, et cetera, you would have to you could charge, but you would have to charge a resident the same as you would charge an outside person.
Okay.
And we've had parking discussions about charging for parking, and I promised I wouldn't bring up paid parking or roundabouts.
When you're looking at
Vero Beach being pristine boat ramps and beaches. If you look around the state, or you look at other places, I lived in in Southern California for 15 years, almost 18 years. And you're paying to access those beaches. I just got back from Lake Tahoe, and one of the key things there is, well, you can't get down to the beach unless you have a permit. And those are limited. And residents have those, but you can't roll in there in an RV and you use beaches that are subsidized by the residents. So to me, the argument sounds like discussion, not argument, discussion is, how much does Vero Beach want to subsidize the county? And how much does the county want to subsidize Vero Beach? And that kind of goes hand in hand. I understand what Ms. Moss's point is, but it sounds like we either have to have a little better negotiating tactic with the county, or county members that are commissioners that are a little more receptive to what value city of Vero Beach maintains and owns.
I've always said Vero Beach is the brand.
Right.
Everybody knows Vero Beach. If you travel, they know Vero Beach. And we have to protect that brand if we want to continue to have our overall county to grow.
Absolutely.
I agree with that 100%. But you talked about boat ramps. You'd think it would be an easy thing. There are no mainland boat ramps between Wabasso Causeway and Oslo Road. Oslo Road, you can launch a very, very shallow water skiff. So the county did a study, and there were no sites that could support that unless they were owned by the In-River Land Trust. And they weren't interested in having boat ramps on the lands that they bought for protection. So we're kind of stuck. I mean, you go across the Barker Bridge, and there's 2 boat ramps on either side of it. Nobody's going to go across that bridge and drive around islands and launch a boat. So if you're in the South County and you have a boat that you keep at your property, you're going to cross that bridge and you're going to launch at the most convenient boat ramp. Sooner or later, we're going to run out of parking for trailers.
Yeah.
And then we're going to really see the issue.
We're almost there now, by the way. Anybody who's in our area. Sorry.
Anybody who lives in Central Beach, especially at the McWilliams boat ramp, if you come there on a weekend, it's mayhem. I mean, you can't, if you happen to have a little league game at the baseball field, you want to go see a kid play, you can't, because you don't have a parking space, because they've taken them all over. Even where there's no parking, they will park in the trailers. And it's getting to that point right now. They just expanded the urban service line. They're just gonna have the Oslo interchange, all the development that's gonna go down to South County. Where do you think those people are going when they wanna go for recreation or entertainment? Just our predicament, and I think we're here trying to tell our citizens that when we look at providing services and whether they're public safety or quality of life, from a city council perspective, we're making I think, some difficult choices. And, nobody likes to get their taxes increased, but you also want your roads paved, and you want certain things, quality of life things to be there, and you want public safety. And these kind of questions that we've talked about always come up. Well, what about the boat ramp? What about the life? What's the county going to do for you? And having a frank discussion like this, to me, is hopefully it's somewhat educational and provide information, which I think is the most important factor.
The last refill at the end near the Seaside Grill there, that portion that was filled in a couple of years ago. Did the city or county pay for? Who paid for that?
The city. Yes.
But just to hop in on this topic and with the seawall, because I see Miss Christine very often on that boardwalk. And I grew up here since I was a year old, so I can't claim that I was born here.
Mine was born here.
But yeah, grew up with Christine's son and Miss Barable's daughter and the whole time. So anyways, I've been here a while and I've seen those hurricanes and the detriment, but I also care deeply about the growth of Vero in a sustainable way. And one thing that comes to mind when I hear seawalls is I just recently took the Florida Master Naturalist course in coastal systems. And one thing that I learned is that though we can put up seawalls, that doesn't really solve the issue of the sand being blown away, removed through the hurricane process. So it might protect the road itself from destruction, or maybe even some of the plant vegetation, depending on where you put the seawall. But the sand itself would ultimately be blown away through wind, through waves, something of that sort. But I wanted to, and we could talk more, so I'm sure we could have a long discussion on that. I wanted to mention something that was really interesting that you mentioned earlier, which was organic conversation coming from the South Beach, because my biggest takeaways throughout this event here tonight was one, the relationship between the county and the city. It seems like a nice dance to be dancing. The second would certainly be like bumping up to 3% and having, I believe, around $85 bump up. That seems very doable, especially with the right type of marketing tactic. And just for reference, though I grew up here, I lived all over the country, and I grew one of the biggest social media marketing companies in the world, specializing in organic marketing. And that was our number one focus. And so when we think of looking at the South Beach area, the Castaway Cove folks, that whole section, I know a lot of those people well. I feel like I know what pulls on their heartstrings, and I'd certainly be open to having a very real conversation about an organic movement to, I don't know if police would be the number one thing, but what you mentioned about voting power and giving them that type of empowering feeling could really bring that part of town in on of course a financial note. That would be, I believe that would put it in like the number 2 slot for revenue for the city. And of course, it would just bring together so much more voting power that I think would just benefit the culture and the community here. So I just kind of wanted to put those 2 cents out there.
Thank you, guys. This is great tonight. County resident, the business in downtown. We've talked about it with both you guys. Have you guys looked into what the city would save if you guys did move, in thinking about economic development, if you did move the building department, if Vero Beach had their own building department and fire inspector's office? Is that a possibility?
We were looking, Jeff, and thanks for bringing it, we're looking at some options. Jason Jeffries, our planning director, it's one of his priorities on his list to get done, but we are looking at those. It's a big step if we brought the entire process back in-house, but we're going to focus first, I think, on trying to resolve the issues with the fire marshal, and then see how that goes from there.
We've promised the theater be concluded at 7. I just realized it's 7:03. So, but I think this is maybe a good start. And now, since you've articulated the point of organic growth, if some of you feel maybe the same way, maybe now next time you get together with your friends and neighbors, you can maybe start the conversation. And I do want to thank Mr. Voss and Carol for coming. And Laura, I appreciate you being here because you're the only member of the county commission that comes. So I appreciate you coming. So what I've learned is that gridlock is alive and well. And but there are some choices, but they're difficult choices because I think they're going to reside now with city council, whether or not you want to keep, as you said earlier, do you just keep passing the plate around to fix a boardwalk or do this, that, and the other? Because as you said, we have very generous people here in the community that kind of underwrite this. Ticket sales of like the theater only covers half of the cost. everything has to be fundraised. Same with the museum, etc. So we don't want to take for granted that we have these people here, right? They can get out a checkbook and say, oh, I'll pay some for Hummuston Boardwalk or what have you. So kind of think about more trying to have the financial resources to do it on our own, right? As the narrative continues. So Monty, I really appreciate your time. I know you had a dinner date and you chose us. I'm so honored. With the stunning wine, with your fast and John, I appreciate your time too as well. And James, so thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time. You're welcome.